Hey, stay tuned. Focus today is going to be on vegetables front and center. Two restaurants. One's Hemlock, right behind me on Rivington Street here, Lower East Side. Diego Moya is the chef, and I love what he does with vegetables. It's not a pure vegetarian restaurant. About 80% of the menu is. He does have fish and meat proteins on the back end, but he concentrates on vegetables, and I love what he does with them. Then we go to Dirt Candy, Amanda Cohen's Dirt Candy 2.0. She used to be East Village, now she's Lower East Side, bigger space. That's a vegetarian restaurant. She's celebrating her 10th anniversary, and I love her and what she's doing. So, vegetables, they're good for you. We're gonna shine that light today.
I'm Mike Colameco, industry insider. Been in the business my whole life, and I know what it takes to succeed. Each week we'll take you into real kitchens, filmed in real time. Backstage passes to a day in the life of chefs, restaurateurs, and their teams. The competition's fierce. Careers, life savings, and reputations hang in the balance. These are my people, and this is their passion. And that's what's next on Mike Colameco's Real Food. Mike Colameco's Real Food is brought to you by the continuous, generous support of the following underwriters.
Extra virgin olive oil from Colavita, an Italian family brand.
Rachel Ray's signature specialty food line, designed for preparing meals at home.
I love vegetables and fruits more than anything. I've done some permaculture work, I've worked on farms. I have a very close connection to growing vegetables. When coming up with dishes here, we try to focus completely and not waste and use as much as we can to really ramp up and focus the flavor of every dish. This came from a dish that I cooked at Arpège in Paris, beet tartare with an egg yolk and the traditional seasonings of a beef tartare. But what we wanted to do is kind of reinforce the flavor of beet. We take yellow beets, grill them on the charcoal, then we juice them and emulsify them with a little bit of olive oil. So it's basically the flavor that you get from a grilled beet with a raw preparation. And just to finish, we make a really fine brunoise of the yellow beet. So you get a little bit of that crunch and a little bit of olive oil. And that's the beet tartare.
So talk about your backstory.
Kin Shop.
The Kin Shop was a fun little restaurant.
It was fun. It was very raucous, American-ish Thai food.
Yes.
That wasn't ridiculous, really good flavors, French technique.
And then Kazumono for a couple of years?
6 years.
Long time.
Yeah, long
really
time.
solid kitchen.
Yeah. I've had a few very interesting sourdoughs where the chef incorporates some kind of vegetable. So we kind of wanted to do something similar with darker flours, but an actual sourdough. This is our sourdough. So this starter is 100% ours. We started it with organic grapes. And all of the grains that we have in this bread are heirloom from our same farm collectives. And we fold in white sweet potato, so you can kind of see little bits of the potato. And as you eat the bread, it's really, really rich and dense. And what we wanted to do with the bread itself is to serve it with some kind of butter that had a flavor similar to sweet potato, and why not sweet potato leaves, which are a fairly common sauteing green in China.
Really?
Yeah, and we found that when you toast them, they start to taste similar to nori, which,
seaweedy.
Who hasn't done like a nori butter? It's
Right.
super delicious, but with sweet potato leaves. And the butter's grass-fed, it's really nice, super tasty.
That's beautiful, chef.
Cool. This is kind of like our take on a traditional polenta dish. So what we do for this dish is we make a fairly intense fennel stock with fennel seeds, fronds, some of the bulbs that have been grilled off. As we pick up the dish, we add a little bit more liquid and kind of reheat it up. Fairly coarse cornmeal, so it's got a real bite, and we try to cook it right to the point where it's cooked but not completely hammered. Make sure it's nicely emulsified. So it's really creamy. And this is another form of fennel that's going on this dish. It's basically almost like a fennel marmalade, that we caramelize heavily so that it has a little bit of color. And then we season it with white wine and vinegar. This is actually a simple ricotta that we make with some milk from the farmer's market. And we add some heavy cream back into it so it's nice and creamy. And then we just finish it with a bright green oil that's made from the fennel fronds, a little star anise, and Pernod. A little sea salt. That's it. I get very excited when radishes come in. These radishes are from upstate farms, black radishes, watermelon, just a mix of all of them. And we kind of wanted to fresh it up, so we use a little bit of spearmint, just to kind of like, to wake it up, to make it a little bit more light. We make cheese in-house, and I took the whey, I didn't want to waste it, so we made a vinaigrette with macadamia nuts and brown butter. We just dress the radishes with the whey sauce. So you get that toasty butter flavor, but not the actual fattiness of the butter. It's a lot lighter.
And mint's a funny one. That's a real curveball flavor to throw in there.
It's probably the most fresh herb. Mint is assertive, but I think with this particular dish, it kind of like
Stands up and works.
stands up. So just a little bit more. So it's a little bit strong.
Yeah, it has a little bit of heat too.
Yeah. And then we just like to cover the dish with macadamia nuts that are chopped very irregular, so you get kind of big pieces, some kind of wafery thin pieces, and a little sea salt.
Alice Firing has been a pioneering proponent of non-interventionist winemaking for as long as I've known her, celebrating winemakers who are foremost sustainable, clean farmers, wines made with native yeasts, and minimalism in the cellar. She's written many, many books on the subject and has a great newsletter as well. I've learned a lot from her. She also introduced me to Hemlock in the first place. Let's meet Alice.
Let's talk about wine as a beverage.
Okay.
Because for most of my life, I think for most people watching, they figured wine is a pretty natural thing. Couldn't be further from the truth. Talk about what 95% of what's out there on the shelf is and how it's done, and the additives that don't, and subtractives that don't have to be listed.
First of all, there are, depending on how you count, between 72 or 200 perfectly legal additives that one can use in wine. There are yeasts and enzymes, and I call those the part of the flavor and fragrance suitcase of the wine world. And so just all these artificial additives, you go into that case, and there are hundreds of different yeasts and hundreds of different enzymes that allow a winemaker to get that pretty nose that they're looking for, and a color that they're looking for, and a flavor. And actually, I want to add something there. If your farming is bereft, you can adjust for that in the winery.
Right.
And there are a lot of things that, well, you're not getting the aromatics that you want.
We'll add them.
Well, add nitrogen. So correct it, as opposed to going back to, let's get the earth healthy so we can make something really beautiful. It's like, no. But the fact of the matter is, what got me into wine, why you started drinking wine, is the excitement of what is in the bottle. And for me, it's a little bit like paper bag dramatics. You have organic viticulture, and we must remember that if you have a restaurant like Diego's, you need to have wine that is going to be as pure as your food. So that means the farming has really got to be right. And so it starts there, and then you don't want to mess it up. You want it to be different every season, every vintage. You don't want the sameness. And all of those additives, they're a little bit like hair gel, hairspray. It fixes it in place, and it makes the wine inert.
And now we're hopefully swinging back.
Without a doubt.
I think so.
We are approaching some of the most glorious wine times.
So these are all the radishes with a vinaigrette made from our whey, from our cheese, some brown butter, and macadamia nuts to emulsify it. Just some more macadamias on top and a little bit of mint just to brighten it up.
It sounds delicious, and I love the way it
really
sounds, the crunchiness of the radishes. The rosé is going to be great with it. This is from the south side of Mount Olympus, and it is a grape called Black Muscat, but it has enough substance to refresh and this strong acidity I found absolutely stunning with the dish.
And really a beautiful texture. It's got more body than you think. That's delicious.
Now I'm wondering if a little bit of the sweetness from this is going to be even better. It's a white Burgundy, and it's very rare Pinot Blanc from the Haute. This, I think, is one of those do no harm. It
As a
works
pairing.
perfect, which I believe in. I believe in do no harms. So basically, based on the radish, it's going to be pretty difficult to pair and not interfere with all that stuff that's going on. And this is a pleasant accompaniment without shouting at it. So this is a Gogita Macaritza, and he works in Imereti, Georgia. Georgia is a tiny little country, but everything's very varied. So out in the west, it's more like the Loire with really cool varieties growing, and no electricity in the Marani is what they call the wineries. Full-fledged, you know, buried pots in the ground is the way he makes the wine. I think this is not going to be a brilliant pairing, but I think it's going to be interesting because the earthiness of it will do some fun things with the mint and the earthiness of the radish. That is an interesting thing about what happens with the wine pairing because it accentuates the radish. And you really brings out the radish, which is already in this solocori from the western part of Georgia.
Great choice. I mean, all three of those.
Yeah, they all work for different reasons. That this is going to, the city is going to just like perk things up and just make it a party. This is going to be, this is really pretty, but this works. And this is like, whoa, we're eating some radishes.
Yeah.
The radishes are really profound.
Yeah, this has electricity. This is really...
Yeah, they just play with this dish in all sorts of fun ways.
Are you personally a vegan vegetarian?
I'm not, but
Mostly.
I love meat and fish, but I like to eat it as little as possible, and only when it's really fantastic. If it's a great steak or like a great piece of fish, then I'm into it. Ideally, I would only use the actual protein as an accent. I don't like to start a dish thinking, okay, I need 4 ounces of steak, and then I'm gonna garnish that steak. I would much rather, have something else, and then maybe use a little beef fat or something to make it interesting and not really focus on the protein. Kind of how they come up with dishes in Southeast Asia, where it's like,
Right.
It's just an accent.
Anywhere where protein's expensive and scarce, it's used minimally.
Minimally and more efficiently, I think. So for this next dish, this is something that's definitely not vegetable-centric. With the proteins that we use here, we try to use sustainable proteins, farm-driven proteins, things that have a lot of flavor, grass-fed. And this particular lamb comes from Pennsylvania. You get hints of flowers and grasses, alfalfa. We kind of wanted to serve it very simply with a little bit of coffee and lemon. We braise them in coffee and then we grill them over charcoal, and it imparts like this richness, but also the coffee, the bitterness. It goes really well with grilled flavor. So these are a little bit smoky now, and we like to take a little bit more of the same glaze, which is made from the same stock.
Just brought all the way down.
All the way down. So it's a little bit viscous. We give it a quick broil, just a few seconds, so it caramelizes a little bit, brings out the bitterness, and kind of gives it a little bit of like a very shiny glaze. We use our spent Meyer lemon peels just to give it some more bitterness. So we just like to grill a small piece so you can squeeze it over if you need it. I don't think it needs it all the time, but some people like a little bit more acidity. And then we serve these really simply, just 3 pieces on the plate, so it's nothing more than the lamb itself, a little bit of lemon and coffee.
Beautiful. What did you have in mind? It was like opening a restaurant on your own.
It's basically taking a chance. Especially in New York, it's very hard. If you don't have a big group behind you, you're not running a huge kitchen with a huge staff, your budget's very tight, it's really, really scary. But the only way to really push technique and food and what you want to do is to do it small like this. It just gets a little bit lost in translation when the restaurants are too big for me.
Dirt Candy is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year, a long run by any measure in New York City, and a testimonial to Amanda, her team, their drive and focus day in and day out.
Okay, I'm gonna need 101's vegan spinach, vegan brassica right away.
I always love the backstory. Toronto? Kid? Canadian?
I am Canadian. I was born in Ottawa, but I grew up in Toronto as well. I'd come to New York for school.
So you did college?
I did college. And then afterwards, I actually traveled a bit. I was living in Hong Kong for a couple of years, and I realized that my goal in life was to travel, that I should be a professional traveler.
Okay. How do you fund that?
Yeah, exactly. That's what my parents said. They were like, we are not paying for that. So the only thing I thought I could do that I would like really was cooking. And I came back to New York, went to school here, and then kind of stayed and didn't travel that much until many years later. The first dish that we put on the menu that I think put us on the map, Portobello mousse. It's the first time people understood that vegetables could be decadent and luxurious.
It's almost like a play on foie.
Yeah, this is mostly made from the stem of the Portobello, but the actual trick is that we don't cook the mushrooms. Because when you cook the mushrooms, you really start to bring out the water. And that's why most pâtés with mushrooms weep and they don't end up blending properly. And on the plate, I'm gonna add some balsamic, some cherry puree, and a little bit of candied ginger puree. So because we don't cook the mushrooms, it manages to
stay intact.
Yeah. We have grilled portobello mushrooms that we shave the head.
What are these guys?
That is dehydrated Asian pears. These are sauteed Asian pears.
So again, you're playing around with textures.
Yeah.
This is one, this is completely different, this is completely
All four of
different,
them.
this is completely different.
A little bit of fleur de sel. Try a little bit of thyme because there's a back flavor of thyme in the mousse as well. That's as simple as it gets.
That's beautiful. There's definitely days in the summer when I don't eat meat or fish, but I can eat mushrooms as a substitute, and there's chock full of protein. I guess what she's getting at, there's like an earthiness to this. Asian pear is kind of watery and crunchy, and the flavor of this actually works really well with the mushrooms. Great dish. When did you become a vegetarian?
When I was about 15, all my friends had become vegetarian, and I thought it was the cool thing to do. But I haven't been vegetarian for about 15 years.
I know that, so you just kind of...
I stopped being a vegetarian so I could actually see what other chefs were doing. At the time, 15 years ago, vegetables were not popular. And so it really was the protein on the plate that chefs cared about. And more than that, if you went out as a vegetarian to like a high-end restaurant, you would get the same plate. So I was really tired of that plate too. So those two factors sort of came together, and I was like, you know, if I want to be a better chef, I have to start eating what chefs care about. I had gotten very frustrated with all the veggie burgers that were getting made and served in the city, and were getting a lot of attention. And while I think a veggie burger can be very delicious, I didn't think it was actually advancing the conversation of food. I feel like if you want people to eat more vegetables, you have to find more interesting things to do with them. So my idea was to come up with a carrot burger, actually using the carrot as the burger.
So we've got carrots a bunch of ways.
Yeah. So these are
Raw?
carrot ribbons, yep. Fermented bamboo shoots, fermented chili peppers, ginger, cilantro, a little lemon juice, a little bit of sesame oil.
Pinch of salt.
Yeah.
So we have crunch, we have acid, we have a touch of heat, we've got some herbaceousness.
I don't want it to be a blended salad. I want it to like hit you in the face with every different flavor. All right, so this is gonna get plated. So these are carrot buns. They're based on a bao bun recipe. We have our confit carrots.
Steamed?
Those are steamed, yep.
These are just a big carrot peeled and then cooked in.
Carrot juice
What it
and
looks like.
olive oil and a little ginger and a little garlic for a couple hours on pretty low.
Just real, like confit.
Yeah. This is some lettuce, onion, and cucumber. These are tiny pickled soy cucumbers. This is our special hoisin sauce.
Hoisin sauce.
It's our play on a Big Mac sauce. And then this is yuba for a little bit of crunch in the burger.
It's like little sliders.
Yeah.
One bite pretty much. You can get away with it.
If you can do it in one bite, it's pretty impressive.
I think that's the challenge.
And you eat sort of enough fake meat and vegetables and regular meat, and you kind of put it together, and you realize it actually is the technique that makes it what it is, not necessarily the protein. That doesn't mean a great steak isn't great. But if you look at something like a hot dog, what really makes a hot dog good is the sort of smokiness, and then ketchup and mustard and like the grill part of it. And so if you can get all that into a vegetable, you have a vegetable hot dog. And that's what we did with the broccoli. We take all the florets off, a single stalk of broccoli, so it's quite long. We smoke it, and then we grill it. And then at service, it gets cooked in a little bit of broccoli raw oil and a little butter, and we have a homemade bun. And there's sauerkraut on it and a South Carolina mustard barbecue sauce.
What's not to love?
Yeah. Smoked and grilled broccoli, house-made bun, mustard sauce, broccoli raw sauerkraut, dehydrated salt and vinegar, broccoli raw chips, and then the South Carolina mustard sauce and a little micro broccoli.
You've also never been a vegetarian restaurant that served like fake meat. There was no seitan, there was no tofu this, there was no, oh, it's our version of General Chow's chicken with hard No, you were just, vegetables are great. Like, I can do enough with them.
We always wanted to celebrate vegetables, and so I kind of wanted to stick to that idea and philosophy. What I decided to do was, instead of using fake meat, we would try to do that with vegetables instead and use a lot of the techniques that meat uses and apply that to vegetables. So smoking, grilling, all that kind of stuff is what we managed to do. So while we have some sort of like, you know, replica dish, it's all done with vegetables, and so to me it brings a whole new meaning to it. That is for 401.
So describe the spinach spätzle to me.
That is spinach spätzle, and then underneath it there's shiso spinach broth. There's a little bit of garlic spinach, lilac spinach, dehydrated Alex cheese, which is a traditional style German cheese, and then sesame seeds, like a lot of sesame seeds.
And the spätzles?
It's spinach, eggs, and flour.
Delicious and good for you. Tell me about this list, because it's pretty unique in a couple of ways, and I want to hear from you.
Sure. It focuses on female winemakers and producers.
Exclusively.
Exclusively.
That's great.
Yeah. Amanda is our executive chef and owner. And many of our managers are women, so it seemed like a natural fit. So it was really fun looking for things and getting that angle, especially in like more traditional markets like France and Spain.
Yeah, and Italy, it's the same way. It's sort of patriarchal. It's harder to find. Women had a hard way to find their way into that. But you're seeing it more and more. So besides the all-female connection, either the owners or the vigneron, the wines are for the most part non-interventionists.
Yeah, minimal intervention.
Low SO2.
Very low SO2, natural, for lack of a better term. So this is a Petnat. This is a France Gonzalez. This is 100% Gamay from Beaujolais. So slightly sparkling, tiny bit of skin contact. As you can see from the color, it's really light, a little cloudy, pretty characteristic of some of those natural wines.
Yeah, they're not filtered, they're not fine.
Not filtered, they're all hand harvested. We start our 9-course menu with this wine.
It's good. It's got a little funk to it. It's kind of good.
It's a little funky.
A little funky that may or may not blow off. We'll see what happens there.
But it's bright.
It's really bright, but it does have this weight in the center. Yeah. It's got this sturdiness to it.
Yeah, you've got that little bit of funk, that little bit of earthy characteristic. Pretty typical of Beaujolais as well, but some kind of like brighter fruit notes, brighter like wild strawberry, sort of like green strawberry. And it's a nice way to sort of like wake up your palate at the beginning. It's got some nice acidity to it.
Yeah, real bright acid.
So.
Jasmine, you have the Beet for 3 coming on 203. I have become one of those chefs that certainly gets a lot of press, and I love getting the PR, so I don't want to turn it down, but there's more female chefs out there than just me, and we're not really looking outside our little box to see who's there and who's cooking and who's doing really interesting food. We just keep reading about the same food over and over again, and there's a whole talent pool that we're not talking about, we're not reading about, and because we're not doing either of those, we keep losing them from the industry.
So what are we plating?
Today we'll be plating a mushroom and espresso pudding.
Damn.
Yeah, it's pretty
Mushrooms again snuck their way in.
I did. I was like determined to make a mushroom dessert.
Good. I'm determined to eat it. All right, I'll let you go.
All right, so we start with our chocolate cylinder, which we make in-house. And then we have a moss cake. So it's a little bit of spinach, a little bit of mint, and we make it look kind of mossy. We're gonna put that on the bottom.
It does look kind of mossy.
Looks like a little mushroom forest moss. So in here we have our mushroom and espresso pudding. So we have a little bit in there, and then over here we have thyme and sunflower seed blondies. So in the mousse, it's just milk. I make a mushroom stock, a little bit of coffee, some shiitakes, and espresso powder. And then we also have our sunflower seed brittle, a little bit of thyme, a little bit of sunflower seeds, a little more crunch.
I'm not a sweets guy, but I'm loving this. Because it's like on the border of sweet and savory.
Yeah, so then we're just gonna layer that up almost like a little trifle.
Yeah.
Do another layer of these guys.
Exactly.
A little extra crunch. And we top it off with a little mushroom.
No.
Yep, looks like a little mushroom garden.
When we do a plate of vegetables here, we only focus on one vegetable. It's really important for me to highlight one vegetable or one family of vegetable at least. And then we look at it and we break it down and we say, how many different textures can we get out of this vegetable? How many different flavors? What flavors are in this vegetable that people don't expect? And then we try to take all those different textures and flavors and put it back together and be like, this is the vegetable that you might recognize, but we've sort of broken it down, put it back together, and it's something you don't recognize, but hopefully feels a little familiar.
Beets are something I freaking love. Like literally, you talk about dirt candy, like the thing that comes to my mind is a beet.
And they come in so many colors. So this is our current favorite, which is the candy cane beets, and these are salt roasted.
How do you do that?
Just keep balling them.
No, Parisian scoop. That old thing, a little tiny baller.
Yeah.
No way.
So because what happens is they're stuffed.
That's crazy. And you scoop that out with a Parisian scoop.
Yeah, and then we get those balls.
Which are what comes out of this when you scoop it,
Yeah.
so you're not wasting it. What do you stuff it with?
Beet greens, a little house-made paneer, and it's all curried together. It's like a sag paneer, but a beet green paneer that we've stuffed inside the beets. They were heated up in the oven with a little bit of our fenugreek oil.
Fenugreek oil. Oil flavored with fenugreek.
Yes. This is a beet chutney. It's actually black salt, a little bit of tamarind, a little bit of jaggery.
What's that guy? Something beety?
It's all beet. It's actually just the pureed excess of the candy cane beets. This is yogurt. Then we have Beet Cake.
What do you call this on the menu?
Beet. Well, we actually don't have a menu, so none of our dishes have names. None of them really have descriptions anymore. This is a little Beet Tuile.
It's a lot of mise en place.
Ugh, my team hates me. This is some raw candy cane beets.
But then because it's a restaurant, you kind of have to do the Beet 12 ways thing.
right.
Otherwise people think, I could have done that at home.
Yeah, they still say that sometimes about my dishes, and I'm like, if you can do that at home, you are actually insane and need to go somewhere.
I think I'm gonna do one whole bite, filled with beet topping and the beet greens and something else. This is restaurant food, because there's no way anyone's gonna do any of this at home. The mise en place is just daunting. I mean, you can do it because you've got a crew. The idea of getting the tops and doing them, and then doing the beets and the Parisian scoop, and then cooking them, the purees. This is why I go out to eat. You get the sense of your vision behind everything.
Well, yeah, I think also because there's nobody else doing this. So everything that I think happens here, I think we see other people doing it in other parts of the US and other parts of the world, but it all starts at Dirt Candy. It is sort of, I'm the first person doing it, and you're the first person who's gonna get to taste it here.
My Colameco's Real Food is brought to you by the continuous, generous support of the following underwriters.
Extra virgin olive oil from Colavita, an Italian family brand.
Rachel Ray's signature specialty food line, designed for preparing meals at home.